think probably this is one of the reasons why it's taken me so long to actually have children, because I needed to be the person that I am now in order to be able to hand those things down and be the mother that I want to be to my children. And if this had happened earlier, there's no way I could give this to my children.
Hello, how you doing? My name is Daniel Duwa. Welcome to Kenyan Stories. I'd like to thank you gorgeous people for joining me on this episode. And before we get started, I just want to reach out to you and ask you if you can to please go into the donation page. There's a link down in the description below. But if you are on Patreon, patreon.com/Daniel Duwa, please go in there and make a donation. I have 100 more stories to share, and you can help me bring this to life. Please go into the patreon.com/Daniel Duwa, patreon.com/Daniel Duwa. I thank you in advance. Now let's get to the show. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good dawning. My name is Daniel Duwa. Welcome to this episode of Kenyan Stories. I know this took a bit of a while to make. I guess the stars hadn't aligned, but we're here now, and I'm glad that you're here with me. You need to remember that these stories are accurate as for the time of the recording and evergreens for a long time. Tonight, my guest is an award-winning world-class documentary and editorial photographer. She has covered conflict. She's an humanitarian. That's a difficult word to say. An humanitarian, a creative entrepreneur, and passionate about community. In this episode, she opens up about her life, taking a very dramatic turn. Also, I'd like to thank my guest in advance because for the 4-hour conversation that we had, she was nursing her new baby the whole time and introducing us to the rest of our family. Amazing. I'd like you to welcome my guest tonight. Her name is Georgina Goodwin. Welcome to the show.
Hi, nice to meet you finally.
Nice to meet you too.
How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm feeling a bit fried.
Oh, me too.
Okay, how come you're so fried?
I was editing some video.
Oh God, you guys literally work through those hours, I know.
I always say it takes 17 hours to make a 3-minute video, and that's just editing.
I'll never do your job, ever, because it's too difficult.
No, photography is harder.
No, that's what I find with videographers. They think photography is harder, and as a photographer, there's no way I'm not going to do videography.
Okay, I love telling stories. Photography is what I do for fun.
When did you start?
To tell stories, probably when I was, 8 or 9.
What constitutes telling a story for you?
So to answer your question properly is, when I was a kid, there wasn't a person who looked like me who was on TV or radio or anything. And I've always asked, and nobody gave me a proper answer, so I just started telling stories. And then I realized I could write, and then after that, it just got from there.
When you say there's nobody like you doing that, what do you mean? Who was doing it, or who was doing what that you saw that there was a gap?
Like Hollywood movies, there were no Africans, and the Africans I saw there didn't look like anybody I knew, because I grew up in this city. I'm a Nairobi kid, and there wasn't even cities in the movie, and the stuff that was shot here, we were really excited, but then it wasn't real for us. So.
Well, what did people say to you? What was the answer they gave you?
When I was like 10 years old, I just hacked into the radio frequency and started playing rock on that. And I got so much trouble for it because there are only 2 stations. I didn't understand why we closed a station at some point. So I just started doing my own thing. And before I know it, it became a thing. How's the baby?
The baby? She's fast asleep, thankfully. She's so sweet.
How old?
Got 2. My eldest just turned 2 years old. Her name's Taya, and the younger one is Kayla, and she's 11 weeks.
Wow! Congratulations.
Yeah, very very small katoto.
Is it a creative thing to wait until a certain time to get kids? Did you wait because you are creative to get children, or if you choose to get kids?
Are you asking me why have I waited for a long time to have babies as opposed to having them earlier on in my life?
Yes, if that's what you wanted.
I waited to find the right man first. Well, from my research of my whole life, talking to other women, it seems to be there's two types of women. The women that don't really mind about what kind of guy, or if they even have a guy, to have a baby. They want the baby, and it's more important to have a baby than to have a guy. So those kind of women have, what's it called? They go and, if you're a cow, it's artificial insemination. What is it if you're a human? I can't remember. They just go and have babies anyway. They don't need to have a partner. And then there's the other kind of women like myself who really need to have the guy first and then the baby. So yeah, it's taken me a really long time to find the guy that I felt 100% sure that this is the person I wanted to have children with. And in fact, I had to go to Tanzania to find him, and he happens to be from South Africa. multi-mixed, experience. But he spent most of his life in Rwanda and Tanzania anyway. So he's a multifaceted person, and I needed that first before I could then have children. And yeah, my career, what I've noticed with photography and women, photography in generally, it's incredibly brutal career. You really have to give 100% of yourself. There's no time where you can have a gap. You have to work, if you like, all the time. In that regard, there is no time for your family. And if you are somebody that wants both, then you have to sacrifice one or the other. Want to have the career and go off and photograph, then you need a partner who's going to fill that gap in your family, to look after your children, to be there. I know the war photographer Lindsay Adario, when she goes off for weeks on end, her husband is the house husband. He's the one that stays at home, looks after the kids, fills in the gap, doesn't necessarily have a career. He can't. You can't have two career-driven people and have a family. One of them has to fill in the gaps. For myself, now with my children even at this age, however old I was, there's no way I can go out and photograph. I know some photographers in the past who only take on some big assignments throughout the year. They take 1 or 2 1-week assignments throughout the year when they're away from their family for that length of time. The rest of the time they take short assignments or assignments in their hometown. But for me, even now, I'm still breastfeeding. So for me to be away from my baby and I'm not expressing, these are just personal choices that I've made, that to be with my kids. And I think that I breastfed my first baby until she was 16 months. So it'll be at least another 1 year before I can actually go out and take on assignments. But that is my choice. I've expanded my company into a media agency, which is called GG Images Media. It works really well with my ethos of training and expanding the knowledge base and talent base within Africa for media personnel, for media people. And so with Canon, as a Canon trainer, that's part of what I do, taking online trainings, especially for Africa-based photographers. And I'm also a mentor for World Press Photo Global 6x6 Talent. They have the 6 continents. Every time there's submission, one of the areas, for example, Asia or Africa or Europe, if somebody wants to come to me and for me to put their name forward, then I can put forward 3 names per round. So as a mentor, I do that. So it's well within what I stand for as a photographer and as a mentor, running this GG Images Media, training people on the job, and being able to bring work in for local media talent around Africa. Okay. So it means that I can sit at my desk and earn a living as well.
It's not giving up or compromising, it's just transitioning something new, which is really difficult. It's issues that women have had for the longest time, and then African men, and then everybody else in that order. What you're saying, if I hear you correct, and again, this is your Kenyan story, you don't give up, you just transition into something else. I don't like the word settling down. Finding a right partner, as you said, plugs into that whole picture, right?
Yeah, I think to emphasize what you're saying a little bit further, it's about a shift in attitude, a shift in headspace. It's certainly not giving up. For me, my going out and photographing is on pause, if you like, taking assignments on pause. However, when I'm with my husband, who's running a conservancy, he's the manager for a conservancy in the Masai Mara, it does mean that when I'm there, we have a really wonderful Maasai young lady who comes in and she hangs out with my firstborn. She's wonderful. She's only 20. She's got 2 of her own kids. She's a really, really lovely young lady. So she comes and she gives us an extra pair of hands and she helps us and she teaches my baby Maasai and, all of that. So it's really fun. It's a wonderful addition to our family when we are in the Mara. And it does mean that if I have some Wageni who come into the camp and they want to have some photographs taken of them on safari or taking pictures, or if they want to dress up in Maasai mshangas and blankets, then, and they want to do a photo shoot, then I can take on assignments there when I'm on the site. I earn a bit of a living there. But the old way of me rushing about to Somaliland and Uganda and Rwanda and South Africa and, sort of going across Nigeria and taking on some trainings. We used to do physical trainings for Canon. So I would be in Kampala and I would be in Lagos training these young guys there in a personal course. We're not doing that anymore. So yes, it's a reframing of a way to earn a living, but also really important to me as somebody who's been in the photography industry for 15 years. It's about reframing myself so that I can stay relevant. And that's a really big thing. I think if photographers or people are trying to get into the industry at the moment, it's incredibly challenging to find your space because everybody has a camera now. Everybody thinks they can take pictures. So it's really not just about taking pictures. It's about what you stand for, what you have to say, how do you carry yourself, how professional you can be, how you can maintain yourself in that professional arena. And these are all the kinds of things that I like to try and teach in my workshops.
One thing we need to do, we need to reframe and go back to the top because we started the conversation in the middle.
Yeah.
Probably let's start with who you are. And when I ask that, normally, when you look at yourself, like in your eyes, mind, who do you feel you are? If you are not a mother, photographer, a female, who would you be? Let's start from there.
Wow, that's a very good question. I think that's a really wonderful way to put it. And I think everybody should have a look at themselves in that different way because photographer, mother, all of that, those are just labels that we create for ourselves. And then we can live by those and we don't actually look any further than that. We can just pass these little business cards out to people and they snap them up as if, yes, that's that person. So yeah, to answer your question, who am I? I feel that I'm somebody who was a very bright, engaged in life young girl who was lucky enough to be born in Kenya, which is the most wonderful, incredible country in the world, born to privileged family with a wonderful opportunity to take part in the history of Kenya and the creation of a positive change. And coming into that life, I was a very happy and bright, engaging young girl, as I said. And then through the middle years of my life, around the sort of 20s and 30s, I think I lost a lot of focus in who I was. I think I got to a place where I was trying too hard. And then in the last 5 years, meeting my husband, and as we said before, settling down, it's given me renewed focus. So to answer your question more concisely, the person I think I am now is I'm really happy with who I am because I've gone through a journey of self-discovery, if you like. And I've got to a place now of a lot more peace than I was. And so I can hopefully be able to give that back in through those labels, through being a mother, through being a photographer, Canon trainer, all those other things. But there's a lot still. I don't want to say self-growth. There's a lot of peace that I've learned. I just hope that I can be somebody that enjoys their life because really that's what we have. We've given a life. And if moment by moment we're not able to actually enjoy it, then really what are we here for? That you must change your headspace, as we're saying, to be in a place where we can actually enjoy what we're given.
How did you lose your way? If you don't mind.
I realized I missed that out in the synopsis of my life. How did I lose my way? It's a very big question that should and could be asked of anyone who loses their way. What happened? It takes a long time, I think, for someone to realize they've lost their way. I didn't have anybody who made me accountable. That's one of the key things in life, is to have a mirror, to where yourself, if you have the tools to keep checking in and making sure that you're on the right track, or your friends or people around you who help keep you on the track. I think possibly in human nature, we test the boundaries and we push the edges. And if the edges just aren't being held fast, then we just keep going and we expand out past a place where we know how to deal with it, because it's just, there's no rules. You just do what you want, and no one's going to make you accountable. So my mother died when I was 14. I'm not sure if she would have been somebody who would have helped me stay accountable. My grandmother was 98. She definitely used to ask questions and make sure that we were doing the right thing and on the right track, but she passed away. And my father is somebody who kind of just agrees with what we're doing anyway. He's not really somebody who lays down the law, if you like, or just lays down some sort of suggested way to be. He's open for discussion, but it's not somewhere where I would be able to follow a way of being, if you like. So yeah, I think I was just left very early on to have the reins to my life, and that was it. I just sort of I just went everywhere with it. I went traveling a lot.
Who raised you?
It's a difficult question. And my mother, probably in the beginning, my parents divorced when I was 4. So I had a very separate life with my mother and my father. My father was the authoritarian, the one that used to tell us how to behave. But and so maybe when I was suddenly let loose, if you like, at 14, and my father didn't step up particularly to tell me how to be, I realized that there was big room to just go running around and do what I want. And it's very easy when you're that young to get lost with all of that. I traveled a lot. I had small jobs here and there, but I spent the money. I didn't save it. I just traveled a lot. I had a few boyfriends. Just really didn't achieve anything, I think. My photography career, if I'd started it earlier and not just squandered my pay and, not just partied or just not taking life too seriously for too long, I think I would have really appreciated, looking back, if I'd started earlier and been more serious with my work and myself and my life, and actually really looked at these things and done the personal work. I think I would have benefited greatly. I think I wasted quite a few years.
I don't wear hats, but if I wore one, I'm going to take my producer hat down. I do a lot of coaching. And one thing I've realized is this: everything that you've done that you think you're not proud of has led you to being the person that you are today.
Yeah.
And given that you had to raise yourself at some point, you're doing well. There's a lot to be said about that. I don't know.
I do appreciate that. I mean, I'm 43, and I think probably this is one of the reasons why it's taken me so long to actually have children, because I needed to be the person that I am now, to strong and focused with a direction in life, in order to be able to hand those things down and be the mother that I want to be to my children. And if this had happened earlier, there's no way I could give this to my children. And I do hear what you're saying. I like the person I am now, and of those years when I could have done things earlier. I say wasted. I like the person I am now. So yes, they aren't wasted. However, I do look back and I think there's 5 years where I really can't remember what I did. I'd like to not say that. I'd like to say in those 5 years, I really went around my life consciously, and I did some good things in that time.
But would you not say those 5 years have a big part to play in who you are today?
They make me not want to be like that again, and therefore more focused. So yes.
What I'm saying is this: like, for example, we have children who are 18 years old, we send them to campus and they're supposed to figure it out. And at 23, 24, then we send them to the world and tell them everything we told them not to do in campus, now they can do. Because now you have to bring a spouse at home, you have to bring a partner, you have to behave a certain way, you have to pay your own bills. Nobody taught you how to do that.
I think that's the problem.
So you figure it out, and you took 5 years out to do that thing.
Yeah.
You're here today. I feel like those 5 years were very paramount. Without the 5 years, would you have been the person you are today? You think?
No, for sure.
So that's your trophy right there. Is it not?
Yeah.
The opposite is very sadistic. I mean, I lost 5 years of my life, as opposed to 5 years of my life developed my character in a certain way. I don't know. I'm just thinking aloud.
I like the way you put that. I'm just thinking aloud when you're right.
I try not to live in a world of right or wrong.
You are right. It is a right thing just to be able to say that. I do agree with you. And I don't think that it's possible to not agree with you on that. The 5 years they aren't lost. I like who I am. And I probably wouldn't have met my husband. I wouldn't have been in that space to have my husband and have my children had I not been that person in those 5 years. And I'm very extraordinarily happy with my life and who my husband is and my children. And I wouldn't swap those.
Part of the reason why I say that is because I started trying to go to radio station, TV station, and TV crews, CNN, BBC, all these people, Sky, ITN. When I was a kid, when I saw a crew, I used to go and try to help out. The traditional media rejected me every time. But then eventually...
Why?
I mean, just, I don't know. I didn't care very much. I didn't sit down to think about it because I just wanted to tell the stories. So I started writing articles and those things. But eventually, we've captured those stories, some of the stories, right? So it kind of adds up. That was character development. If the kids call it character development nowadays, so it's scary to see that out. Now, when I sit on my bath to reflect, that stuff makes sense. You know what I mean? We can go to a certain time, and we have records of that. And if I had gone to media, it would have been a different direction. Or if I had gone to PR, to whatever firm, that rejection led us here. And for me, that's why I do these stories, because if we don't do these stories, nobody will. When you're not here anymore, and then this part of our lives is not captured, and then what?
I think what we can also say about having where we are in our lives right now, we have the choice to accept and be happy with where we are, because we don't know where else we might have ended up. Whatever has happened has to be the right thing for us, if you like, because we are where we are, and the big acceptance means peace.
Would you say that the pain and the sorrow made you an artist, or you were an artist before and the sorrow just catalyzed it?
Do you know, I'm very upset to even say that I don't feel like I'm an artist. Yeah. And I say I'm upset because I wish I was. I wish I was an artist. I don't feel like one of the big hashtags I use on Instagram is create every day. So yes, I do to some degree create a story. I share from my life. I create images. I don't feel I'm a front runner or a real beauty artist. I'm more of a documentary person. I photograph and capture what is happening as opposed to, and I find the beauty in that. So yes, I don't see it as art. I see it as sort of like a duty and a documentary rather than an art. So a lot of photographers I see on Instagram, instead of in the title, instead of saying photographer, they put artist. And and their work does lend itself in that direction. It is beautiful, aesthetically pleasing pictures. But for me, I don't feel like I'm an artist. And I wish I was, because I also play musical instruments. I play the piano. I played lots of other instruments when I was at school. But I wasn't somebody who was able to make the music up. I had to read it from a book. And the same is with my photography. I don't make up designs or ways of photographing with new techniques. I don't go out and explore and experiment as I feel I'm an artist in that way, where I'm creating new designs and I'm plowing the way for other people to follow. I feel like I'm just pretty much doing what other people are doing, which is documenting how other people do it. I'm documenting through my own way and making sure that is as good as I can do it.
I hope that you're enjoying the conversation so far. So I'm going to take a small break and tell you some of the other stuff I do. Then we're going to get back with my guest, Georgina Goodwin. I'd like to thank you again for joining me on this Kenyan Story. It's amazing that you're here, and I appreciate you. And also, I would appreciate very much if you can go to Daniel Duwa Books on Amazon, Daniel Duwa Books on Amazon, and get yourself a copy. In that way, you get to support this work. And also, if you're so inclined, you can sign up for business leadership training session with me. That is Daniel Duwa Business Leadership Coaching. The description is in the show notes below. And finally, also, if you're so inclined and you love art or merchandise, you can go to the Love Art Store by Daniel Duwa. Again, these are ways you can support this work. Of course, there's the donate button, patreon.com/Daniel Duwa, or a direct donation link is in the show notes below. All the details are in the show notes below. Again, thank you very much for joining me. Let's get back to the show. Let's join Georgina as she tells us of this interesting part of her life.
The line cut, you were in mid-statement. You wanted to tell us what you do outside of motherhood and photography and teaching, all the other stuff.
Well, I guess one of the things that I did a lot of cooking. Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm a very good cook, but what I do like to do is find recipes that bring in unique ingredients and also that are quite healthy. Oh, here's my cat.
What's the name?
You've been introduced to all the members of the family.
Yes.
So the cat's called Meow Meow.
Nice.
Very unique.
It's funny that we invented the internet and then the cats took over.
Oh, yes. Definitely. She loves cuddles. Yeah, coming and sitting near me because I'm the one that cuddles her. But yeah, so cooking just recipes with different ingredients. I use a lot of coconut milk, just using things like nuts. Oh, I don't know. For example, there's a vinaigrette that uses, when you chop the head off a carrot,
yeah,
that little bit of the top of the carrot, which has got this a tiny bit of stalk. So it's like carrot top vinaigrette. You brew it with some very, very finely chopped onions and vinegar, a bit of sugar with the carrot tops, and you let it brew for, I don't know, maybe like half an hour. And it is really delicious vinaigrette that goes on sort of salad, and the recipe goes with like a sort of a carrot pastry, if you like. So I don't know, just different stuff like that, but also lots to do with vegetables. And I was a vegetarian for about 6 years. The pain of knowing there's so much pain of animals being hurt was affecting me. For 5-6 years, I didn't eat meat. And then I got pregnant and I realized actually that I did actually need to start eating meat. So I only eat chicken from people that have good farming practice. Happy chickens, happy turkeys. I always say if you can't kill it yourself, then don't eat it. So, and I don't know if I could kill a turkey or a chicken. That's my ethic, really. And there's also lots of toxins and terrible things that go into commercially grown meat. And one of my stories actually for animal rights, for the animal protection, was to look at the pigs in Kikuyu. I was photographing for Kenyan Animal Rights Company to petition the government, carrying animals from the farm to the slaughterhouse in a more ethical manner, so they're not beaten up and bruised. So it's economic sense, so that the meat is not so damaged, but it's also nicer for the animals in their last hours. So it's a quite interesting story. Yeah, a lot of non-meat dishes, really. So yeah, you'll find me in the kitchen.
Okay, cool. So yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a very good cook who's not a chef. So
that's a good way to put it, actually. Cook who's not a chef. I'd like to. I made my first matoke the other day. It was a matoke. I put chicken in, actually. But I love matoke. And I made my first matoke. That's why I love going to Uganda, because you get matoke everywhere. Really nice. Doing lots of African dishes, Nigerian beans, and doing lots of peanuts and okra. So I definitely like using all of that stuff as well.
What's your favorite meal?
I used to love sushi, actually. I absolutely loved sushi for a really long time. That would have been my last or first meal. But for some reason, I've changed from that now. Hi, Daniel.
Hi, we woke up the baby.
Thank you. Yeah, I got to nyonyesha her a little bit first, then I'll introduce you. But here's my other little one. This is Taya.
Hello, Taya.
Taya, say hi, Daniel. There we are.
Looks so alike.
Okay, I'll ask her to give us some peace and quiet as well. TB, okay. Listen, would you mind lending us your room for a little bit longer? Okay, go and hang out with Daddy, okay? Okay, cool.
Do you want to feed her first and then we talk afterwards? Babies
whatever you prefer. I'm happy talking and feeding her, but
it's up to you, really.
I don't have any boobies showing, so it's okay.
Oh, okay.
I'm okay. This is maybe part of being a mama and a photographer.
Yes. Let's continue if you're open to it.
Yeah, I don't mind. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to have anything showing that shouldn't be showing. Fine. This is part of the job, right?
Yeah. Most people talk about the easiest part of being a mother and having kids. What's the most challenging part of being a mother right now for you? Like, honestly.
Sleep. Sleep. Okay, so the most challenging thing is managing to maintain being calm and not shouting or being aggressive or shouting at my children, but also being absolutely exhausted. So just managing to maintain calm discipline and still, managing our household. And I think that's the most challenging thing, being the best person I can be all the time.
But shooting photography is really hard. I mean, because you sit in the wild forever. I mean, you shoot animals, right?
Well, I do sort of now. Traditionally, for my 15 years, I've actually been a documentary photographer, photographing people. So my tagline really is photographing women, social issues, and the environment. So really the wildlife and the animals, the reason why I'm photographing them is because they fall under the category of sort of environment and maybe sort of social issues, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
To do with the human-wildlife conflict and all of that. Here we go. Come on. She's just woken up.
We're disturbing her 7 weeks old.
She's 11 weeks.
Oh, 11 weeks old, yeah?
Yeah, she's coming up 3 months.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And did you time it? Like, because your kids are born within that pandemic period?
Yeah, it was timed, definitely. Just because I'm getting older and, it's just, we need to find your chop. And so as soon as I felt like I could actually handle another one, and without it being too long after my firstborn, we wanted around 2 years difference, which is why as soon as I realized that we needed to find your chop, we started planning for another one. And fortunately it happened quite quickly. So they're just under 2 years apart. They're 1 year and 11 months apart.
Okay. Did you feel at some point, like let's say in those days, did you feel a sense of urgency at some point to get kids?
There was definitely urgency because of my age, really. I think, I didn't want to be waiting too much longer and then having an issue, basically, with having kids. My husband also is 10 years older than me. So, it's important that we make sure that he's not 100 when the kids are 10. Or that he's even got some lifespan left to enjoy and be with his kids.
Run after the kids, right?
Yeah. So let me introduce you. This is Kayla. Kayla, say hi to Daniel.
Hello, Kayla.
She's so funny. She has this spiky hair on the top, and she looks like a little sumo wrestler. She's really chubby.
I was going to say a rock star, but yeah.
She's got her spiky hair. But there we go. I'll keep just nyonyashing her a little bit as we go because she'll want more. But yeah, you asked me a question just now and I didn't quite fully answer it. Could you just remind me what I've not answered?
Oh, the one I wanted you to put you under the fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we started talking about kids and then I was like, that just went off the window for a while. One thing that I wanted to know was, in the last 5 years, 7 years of your life, your struggles, your biggest struggles.
I think with direction, with having a sort of clear purpose with what I'm trying to achieve with life. And photography did help me with that. I was able to use that as a medium to tell stories, to go out and find, especially with women, who are, one of my big clients or people I work with, if you like, is the Fistula Foundation. Women who have fistula, who are ostracized from society, whose husbands leave them just simply because they're leaking urine or because of a tear in their tubing, if you like, because of childbirth, and it's due to prolonged obstructed labor. So I've been working with the Fistula Foundation on and off for 5-6 years now, telling women stories about that. And those kinds of things are, really empowering, connecting with the women and what they've gone through, with an agency that really care, that really find such a specific issue, and they're able, through funding, through my images, to make a big change in these women's lives, to give them the surgery that can just change their life, that can stop them being incontinent, or at least help them, even if they can't fix the tear or the wound inside, they can actually do some surgery where these women wear colostomy bags and they don't have leaking urine. And so it's that kind of empowering or wonderful direction in my life was really helpful. There were some things that really boosted my journey. For example, in 2018, I was asked if I wanted to become a Canon Ambassador, and I was put forward within the industry, if you like, to be a Canon Ambassador. So I accepted. And I didn't realize that it was a 2.5-year contract. Quite upsetting when they called me after 2.5 years and said, we're not going to extend your ambassadorship. We're going to stop allowing you to be an ambassador. They told me it's because I wasn't in touch enough with the local Kenya Canon office. And it's true, I wasn't as in touch as I could have been with the local Canon office. I think there's a lot more reasons to it. Suddenly becoming a mother, I wasn't as into my photography. I wasn't really there in my headspace. I was dealing much more with my home space as opposed to being a photographer. And I wasn't out sharing or bigging up the Canon brand or, being the person that I was, which was winning Kenya Photographer of the Year and being out telling stories and being this big ambassador for photography. And my priorities changed. I do feel that also there's a more space. I don't know if it's just another thing. I shouldn't really say it or want to say it, but yes, I'm Kenyan, but I'm not Black. And there's definitely a very big move in the African and the photography industry for inclusivity, for diversity. And yes, I'm a woman, but I think that I wasn't saying the right things, and I'm not really the right color for what's fashionable and what's necessary going forward, perhaps, in the emerging market of Africa. They've kept on and got new Canon ambassadors. The Kenyan Canon ambassador is a guy called Clement Wild. He's out with the equipment, talking to Paula Kahumbu, talking with the big wildlife film photographers and videographers. Wildlife photography is becoming much more fashionable. So he really embodies the person that they need for Canon ambassadorship. And, here I am as a little Mzungu, yes, female, but little Mzungu girl who's now focusing more on just being a mama. It's not really the dialogue that they want to be sharing. So I totally understand it. While my ego got a big deflation, it was a good lesson for me to actually regroup. And instead of just relying on a big label like being a Canon ambassador to get noticed or be relevant in the industry, I'm having to now, as I say, regroup and see who I am, what it is about me, myself, trying to be more authentic with how I represent myself, in social media so that I can get an authentic following, just find out really what it is that I want to say. Because in the past, I was just saying, what I felt my duty was, which is looking at women's stories and trying to show to the world things that I think that the world should know about, like what is fistula, how do we fix it, and women's stories and environmental stories and social stories, which is what my passion is. But now, I have another way that I need to reframe it, which is as a mother with kids, how do you still have this big heavy duty of saying all these things? I actually found that people weren't as engaged with me with what I was trying to say with other people's stories, because I think I was just taking on the ethos maybe of the NGO, or I was passionate about it, but it wasn't coming from a deep enough place. I think if you have a big fire burning about something you want to say, it has to come from a very deep place and people will listen to you. And so I think I'm just finding more and more and more what that deep place is for me. And yes, the deepness was to care about women and those things, but there's still a deeper space still that I can come from. And I think, what is it that I'm trying to say to people from my life as a new mom?
It's a lot to unpack. And you asked me why I wasn't picked. I wasn't a Mzungu. There are those who would say you got the ambassadorship for Canon because you're Mzungu and you're a woman. Now, because the world is changing, you lost it because you're Mzungu and you're a woman. How do you square that? How do you live with that reality? And then also is the other thing, the stories you're telling before were not related. It's not your authentic story in a way. So how do you square it? How do you live with that reality?
How does that become okay? As you say, it's a journey. It's learning what makes sense for me. I think one of the key things is it important for me to square it off and make that okay? Because a lot of people just live their life not doing that. And for me, I think that's a little bit about living a half life or a quarter life and not really being honest with ourselves, or not really being honest about how important it is to actually square it off, if you like. So it takes work to really balance that for oneself in life. It takes perseverance, looking at yourself, finding what doesn't feel comfortable, and digging away at that to see what it actually is, and then looking at it and trying to work out why it happened. How do you feel about it? How can you make it better? Does it really matter? Actually looking at it, but you've got to get to the place where you see it, so you've got to do the digging, and there's the hard work. And I think a lot of people don't know how to dig, and it takes time. Even for myself, what tool am I going to use to dig? Am I ready to look? How long is it going to take? Am I going to put the time in? So I don't know. Hopefully I will get to that place where I really feel like I can be 100% authentic. I feel my husband is one of those people that is that. So I do have a really good role model, somebody who does not put up with non-authenticity, if you like. He challenges me on everything where I may just gloss over the truth, or I say the word which is too general and it's actually more specific. He challenges me. He makes sure that I actually say what I mean to say instead of glossing over it. So I do have a good teacher, if you like, but it is taking a really long time for me to, get down past the layers. And so I don't know when I'll get there. And the journey is exhausting for me, because I see a lot of people out there who seem to already have a very clear voice in what they want to say. One of the things that has been an issue, or I feel has been an issue for me in my life, is that I'm interested in a lot of different things. And if you look at social media channels, that people who have an Instagram channel, they post about one thing. So there'll be a wildlife photographer, or there'll be a food blogger, or there'll be an exercise person. And that's one of my problems. My interests are so wide. To get a fan base or get an audience of somebody or people who are going to be interested in all the things I post about or would like to post about, it's harder. It's harder to get people to listen to you if you talk about a lot of different stuff. So what I'm realizing now is to be more in being authentic, is to actually embrace that. To answer your question, what's really interesting for me, I love food. I love different types of food. I love photography in the beauty of it, the different light, different lightings, evening sunsets, the kind of beauty and the colors that come through in there. Not just this big heavy stuff that I traditionally talked about, but the really small stuff, like how a shape or a beauty or a shadow, or that really simple stuff, which maybe I thought was too simple in the past, but I'm actually having the courage to celebrate that. I love the fact that I'm Kenyan, even though people think, where's some silly stuff like that. So, it used to be a big chip on my shoulder to prove that I am Kenyan, and people say, where's your Kenya? Like this, and I have to, really chat to them and tell them, no, but I'm in Kenya, silly little Mzungu accent that I have.
What do you think makes you Kenyan?
It's a very good question. Kind of everything. The problem with being the Kenyan that I am is that I'm the smallest minority tribe, if you like. So not many people understand what a little white Kenyan, what that means. It's a very specific accent. It's a very specific way of thinking. It's a very specific passion and love and of this place, of this country, of how it works, and it's a specific way of actually functioning, I think. So what makes me Kenyan? I just think that there's nowhere else in the world that I was born here. I've got a Kenyan passport. I'm not entitled to any other passport. So officially that would be my answer, but in my heart, it's being able to look at somebody's face and know which part of Kenya they come from because of their tiny little accent, the way their tongue talks, the way their little head crooks, the way they look, the way they dress, and really loving that, and loving that I know the idiosyncrasies of the people of this place, and of knowing how the ground smells when it rains, knowing that happens here in Kenya, and it's that beautiful sweet scent that comes off the ground that you do not get that in Europe. I mean, you just don't. And I don't know if you would get it in America. I don't know if you get it in countries where you don't get the way that the sun hits the soil in this place. Tanzania obviously looks and feels similar, but it's totally different. Its people are completely different. because of the way that the socialism and the way Nyerere brought up the country, if you like. And it feels alien to me. There's no way I can talk to a Tanzanian police. They scare the crap out of me. But, I chat to a policeman here. I know I can sweet talk a policeman and get my way out. And that's being Kenyan.
That's interesting because you talk about the police. Yeah. Those people would argue that because you're Kenyan Caucasian, you get certain privileges. What
it's true, and I know how to milk it too. It is the way it is. Yeah, if the thing is, being Kenyan Caucasian, if you like to put it that way, I don't know, unless if you got a Swedish guy or somebody who's been living here for 5-10 years, he would know that he has those privileges too. So it comes with knowing the territory, but then being able to speak Swahili and talk to the policeman. There's levels of Kenyanness, perhaps, if you like. I mean, somebody who wasn't born here but has lived here for 60 years may not say that they're Kenyan, but they've got more experience of being in Kenya than me, who's been here for 43 years. There's lots of different ways of looking at what it means, as you say, of being Kenyan.
But the world is not forgiving, because remember...
They're not forgiving, yeah.
Yeah, when we were talking about the ambassador thing, 5 years ago, you were the perfect symbol for it. And right now, the world is changing. And because, again, you are a woman, probably you're not gay and you're not African. Yeah.
I don't have all those vulnerabilities, if you like, or I'm not LGBTQ. Yes. The more unique you are, if you like, you're the more of a new fashionable thing, maybe. The more marketable you are.
You're a traditional media person, and you're trying to fit in social media. If you have a label, it becomes easier to operate in. Do you feel hurt by this? Like, honestly, as a person?
Yeah, I really did. And in fact, I feel a lot of the conversations that go on in the industry with Canon really fuels the negative discriminations that people feel that they have had against them. There's lots of big space being given to people, lots of big discussion within the Canon conversation about people who feel that they've been hard done by because of their gender and because of their race. And whilst it is a conversation that needs to be had, I feel that it's been happening for the last 5 years. I do feel it's time to say, okay, guys, we can acknowledge this, but let's really not dwell on it and move on. I can be on the record now even saying this, not as a Canon, because I'm not a Canon ambassador anymore. I feel that there's a lot of heavy space within the Canon industry where that is being dwelt on a lot instead of dealing with more positive things.
But is that not true for most Eurocentric companies, where they come up and go like, this is what, because at the end of the day, they're a company, they need to make a profit, they need to create interesting stories for their brand. So they're going to always push whatever is current. And right now, being interesting, as you call it, is very current.
Yeah.
But then the same argument, I'm going to go back to the same argument. 5 years ago, you had that interesting conversation. It's a wider conversation.
I don't think the conversation was being had as importantly and deeply as it is being had now about diversity and inclusion. 5 years ago, I was a very active personality in East African photography, and I speak well and I present myself well. So I think that was one of the reasons why I was given the opportunity to be an ambassador. But now, having not stepped up to the plate after those 2 years to carrying on being that big personality that's needed, there are other people that are more relevant, and they are the right type of person that is needed to be on the front now, if you like. So yes, diversity, inclusion. Yes, I know Clement's a man, but he is doing what's needed really to show the brand He's out there really asking the questions and showcasing the equipment and really being a motivator for young photographers in Africa to look to this person as a Canon ambassador. So I have no hard feelings. Clement is now a Canon ambassador and I'm not. And I do see, there's Gulshan Khan in South Africa and Yagazir Emezi in Nigeria, and then Sarah Waiswa, who's actually Ugandan, but she's now living in Kenya. And they're all women of color, if you like. It is the way that it needs to go, and I really appreciate that. So yes, I was hurt, and I did feel upset that I was let go, if you like. But I do see that it is necessary, and I wasn't doing the work that was needed in order to keep my place.
That said, you've taken all this stuff. I don't like calling them lessons, but life experiences, and you've started your agency.
Yeah.
And your experience as an ambassador, your experience as a photographer longer than that. I mean, when did you start photography, by the way? We didn't even talk about that.
15 years ago.
So it's been a lifetime of photography. Do you remember the first photograph you took?
Actually, I was 6 years old when I was at Turi. My parents sent me to boarding school at St. Andrew's School, Turi, and my mum gave me this really old little film camera, and they don't make those films anymore. It's not even the one that you can put in and wind, and it didn't even have a glass viewfinder. It was this tiny little box. So even from the age of 6, I was really interested in capturing and taking pictures. But what really cemented my relationship with wanting to become a photographer is in 2003 and 4, I was working as a stewardess on a yacht. Got the job in South Africa, and we sailed from South Africa to Malaysia to take the yacht in for a refit. And the journey was really, really emotionally challenging for me, being out at sea for days on end with nothing, nothing to see, and just this 32-meter yacht with 4 other people. It was like a reality show, managing to deal with these other people. And I had my camera. I bought a camera before I left Cape Town. It was a film camera. It was a way to express myself during those difficult times, just trying to be creative, finding objects and color and light, channeling that into something just bigger than myself, if you like. The pictures are all absolutely terrible. I can't claim that any one of them is really good at all, but the need to press that shutter button and look through that viewfinder was really became quite apparent during that time. And then I came back to Kenya and I got a job running a camp in the Masai Mara, and the owner of the camp had a client coming from Hong Kong. I put forward some of my salary and I got my first digital SLR, which was the Canon 10D. And if I think back at the size of this thing, I mean, it's the word I used to describe that camera is dinosauric. It's just this massive, big camera. And I didn't know anything about photography. I would sit on the toilet with the view out across Africa, reading my secondhand books from a bookstore about aperture and shutter speed, and learning like really what all that means, and just not knowing at all what I was doing, but still going out into on game drives with Wageni, sometimes by myself, just taking pictures, and really not knowing anything, taking pictures. A lot of photographers I know, when they first start, they take pictures of things that are easier than people. For example, flowers and bugs, because they don't move, they don't answer back, you don't have to get permission. I did a lot of that. I did a lot of flowers and a lot of bugs, a lot of dogs, and I did the dog show in Nairobi, and I gave away a lot of my images. Clients of the jobs just got bigger and bigger, and I learned on the job. And I look back at some of the pictures I took on some of my first jobs, and I think, oh my God, how did I hand those in? My goodness, how did the client even want to pay me? They're terrible. But I learned really quickly, and I was really, really passionate about taking the pictures. It took me 10 years to realize quite what it was that I was addicted to with taking pictures. And for me, look, what I'm able to say now is that when I look through the viewfinder, my addiction is getting that shot as perfect as possible with everything, with the lighting, with the composition, with the rule of thirds, with people moving, with the eyes not being shut, with getting permission beforehand, all of that, just getting it absolutely perfect, like a sum, if you like, just adding it all up and making sure it makes sense as I press the button. That's the challenge that I really enjoy. And that's the addiction, trying to get an award-winning shot every time I press the button.
And that comes with a lot of experience so far.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of experience and just analyzing what you've photographed. And now, as a teacher of photography, as a trainer for certified trainer for Canon, as a mentor, and as somebody who's been working as a photographer with field experience with clients, ranging from New York Times all the way down to small NGOs, in around Africa, being able to see what works for the client, not photographing people with their heads down doing things because this part of the body is not that interesting, and not photographing people when they've got their backs to you, but waiting naturally or asking them if you're allowed ethically with the way that your photography is set up, asking them to turn around, making sure that a shot is going to be as good as it can be, instead of just shooting what you see, creating it and designing it so that it is the best it can be.
I know this might sound controversial, but to me it's not. I mean, people say your work, your photography it's like your children. What's your favorite photo that you've ever taken, for whichever reason? What's one photo that you've ever taken that just like, this just means everything to you? And it doesn't have to be technically amazing.
Yeah.
It just have to have meaning to you.
There's a few. Of the 15 years that I've been photographing, one of the key things as a working photographer is to keep an updated portfolio, make sure that out of every assignment you pull out the best pictures, and over that year you go back through your work and you pull out all the best pictures. And as you go through 15 years, you'll have maybe one picture from each year, or two from that year and none from last year, or whatever. Of all the 15-year experience I've got, I have a sort of 20 pictures or so that come through as the ones that I would say, yes, these are the ones I really love. It's actually very, very hard to say that there is only one picture that I really love. Let me see, when I'm thinking through all those pictures, one of the things that I've tried very hard in my career is to try and copy some of the other more famous photographers, or the ones that have portfolios, with New York Times, constantly working with, big names all the time. And I look at their work and I see quite heavy edited pictures with a lot of deep browns and dark greens and maroons and sort of, color palettes, if you like, that are much less vibrant than mine. And they look amazing and they're so professional. And, and I look at mine and I have bright red and bright yellow and bright blue. Bright red is a very, very key color for me. If you look at all my pictures, I've tried to dampen that down to become like the other photographers.
Why is bright red important to you?
I've tried to change that because I want it to be like all the other big photographers, because I love it.
Why would you want to change something that you are?
In my mind, they are deemed more successful than me because they're working for big agency or big company, and they're more globally known. For me, traditionally in my photography career, that means success. I want to see, why. So maybe the way they take the pictures is more fashionable. Definitely with European and American photographers, that's the way they photograph. For whatever reason, maybe they grew up with less color or something. I don't even know.
You said it by yourself. It's the Kenyan sun, the way it hits the ground.
For me, I wanted just to see why they're more successful because of their color palette or because of how they photograph. And I think I was just testing to see if I could be more like them, would I become more successful, if you like. It comes from insecurity or just testing the edges and seeing, what is it that makes me, because I'm not as successful as them and my images are different, what makes them successful. I haven't answered your question about which of my images is the one that I love. And very recently I posted an image of a woman kissing her young son, Mohammed. I can't remember her name now because I'm a little bit tired. I photographed her on assignment for an NGO, and it's in a shot that I took in Somaliland, looking at the story of nutrition and the issues of nutrition for children in drought region, basically. And I really, really love that image of her hugging her little 1-year-old boy, who they're at a nutrition center. There's just this absolute beautiful moment between the mother and her son, of care, of devotion, of love. Doesn't matter what's needed. She's walked, I don't know how many kilometers to come to that center to get nutrition for her kid. I love that image because I was able to capture a beautiful moment between a mother and a son. And now as a mother, I'm able to connect to what that moment means and how important it is in life to actually have that. for oneself and to experience it and to have captured that really beautiful moment. And the colors in that image are bright yellow and bright blue. It's just such a peaceful, beautiful moment. So for me, I think that probably has to be one of my favorite images.
Something that I'm realizing is you have fought really hard to belong. If somebody else was looking at you, they'd feel you're successful, you have privilege, you have all this stuff. Why this insecurity? Where do you think it comes from?
I think a lot of it is because I'm a white person in a black world and I'm not accepted in my own country for what I look like. And if I go to another country where it's mostly white people, then fine, I'll blend in. And there has to be, it feels actually really nice not to stick out, because it doesn't matter. We've got 50 years of independence in this country, but it doesn't matter where I go. I'm always a Mzungu that's stared at. It doesn't matter even in Nairobi. There's white people everywhere, but still I'm somebody that's stared at. And it's not being stared at in a way of interest, or I'm always somebody that doesn't belong. So for me, it's difficult to be a white person, a white African, because why should I even have to say white African? I'm an African. But I have to put that difference, because then people will understand. I don't know, I shouldn't even have to put the word white in there, but because it's obvious. But then people say, no, you're not African. So if I say white African, then people say, oh, well, maybe you can be that. It's been a big issue for me my whole life, because I feel I'm kind of pissed off. Why can't I be what I am?
But the challenge is it's a problem of privilege in a way. Because, for example, personally, I've gone through something like that, but it's in the opposite direction. I've always been in rooms where I was the only African, and the people who were making decisions were 60-year-old Caucasian men.
One of the big issues that we have in the photography industry and in the world in general. Thank God for Obama, and now we have another white old man again.
It's a problem of privilege in a way. There are people who say you're already in the room, why are you complaining? Yeah. But then again, people complain about their own issues. It's not about the whole world. All your life, you've been saving the world. You've been doing all these campaigns, NGOs, all this stuff. My question would be, while you're saving the world, who's saving you? And who has been saving you the whole time?
Well, I feel a lot of me is that I feel hard done by, because I don't feel anyone saved me, especially when my mom died. But definitely my husband. I cannot be more grateful. I love him so much. He's the most incredible human being. He's tough as nuts. Like he's really, there's no getting away with any bullshit. There's no getting away with it. So he's very, very hard on me. I can't even say a sentence where the words aren't fact. Like I can't just gloss over and make a quick generalization, because I'm too lazy to be specific, because I can be quite lazy with my language. And he doesn't let me get away with anything. And it's really important to have somebody like that in your life where you're accountable. Yeah. And he makes me accountable every single minute of my life. And I'm so grateful, because he's helped me iron out a lot of the rubbish of who I was, or carrying around all the things that aren't true about me, or all the crap. He'll tell me off for saying that he saved me. Everybody needs somebody who they can be accountable with or to, because that's where the truth is. Because we can all lie to ourselves all the time, and unless we have that person who checks us, including ourselves, who can check us. And if you don't know how to check yourself, you learn that by other people helping you with those tools. So I check myself where I can, because I've learned some tools now about that. But otherwise, I have him to do it for me. And I'm so grateful for that, because that for me is where I've been saved, not having bullshit in my life. And that's where peace and honesty, integrity, authenticity, that's where all those things come from. And that's where truth and peace lie.
Okay. Well, one thing I've noticed is, for everything that you feel like you've done wrong, I feel like you've done right, in the sense life begins at 40 in many ways. Because I've met a lot of people in the last 10 years, and you find their first marriages break between 40 and 50, and they're reframing their life, and they're starting to be really, really happy, because probably they marry when they're too young and you don't know what you're doing. Right now, there's a lot of women and men out there who feel very lost. Let's specifically talk about that 40, 50 age group. And they feel as they don't have a sense of purpose. You're just finding your sense of purpose, and for the first time, you feel like you're actually living your true life.
Yeah.
What do you tell such people?
Yeah, it's very difficult. I think about this quite a lot. I have a few people that I know in my life who I feel are quite lost. It's very difficult to know what to say to them because they don't seem to have people in their life that help them be accountable. I've been very lucky. I found this person, and so I have this avenue in my life, and I feel very lucky. And the people who I feel are lost, or a bit lost, or they're struggling with their life, they don't have that. I don't know how somebody can have it for themselves, because I don't necessarily have it for myself with me. I have it with my partner, and we can't go out and just order ourselves an amazing partner who's going to give that avenue. What can I say to somebody? I think really, really important is to do the work on yourself. Have quiet time for yourself where you're not distracted, you're not escaping. Meditate. It's about going and looking inside, and as I talked about earlier on in our conversation, doing the digging, finding the tools. Are you going to use a shovel or a spade? Like, how are you going to dig? Just don't be afraid or worried about going as deep into yourself as you possibly can, to look at all those nooks and crannies and the corners that you think are in shadow, and you don't know what's hiding in those shadows. But it's really not as scary as you think it might be, because when you start looking at that shadow, you let light in and the shadow's gone. You see stuff in there that's actually really cool about who you are. It's not scary. As somebody who had a load of shadows, a load of corners, a huge attic full of crap, I have shone a lot of light into that attic. But I realized there's still corners, there's still shadows that I don't know are there. Maybe I do, and I'm still not looking at them. But it's still an ongoing journey. But what I do know is it's not scary to look into those deep, dark places. It's actually really fun, letting some light in. You learn so much more about yourself, and you can become a fuller, bigger, greater person with having more of you there.
Okay. Is that the time you are in the yacht going to Hong Kong, was that reflective time? Just being in the sea with nothing else to see. Do you get it from places like that?
Well, yes, as long as you don't run away in places like that. When you're faced with having to look at yourself, not by choice, when you're shoved into a huge place where you're forced to look at yourself, it may be that you're not ready. It may be that you run away because it is scary, because it's not by choice. So yes, I think a lot of self-reflection can come in that time, but a lot of, possibly at that time, I probably shut down and didn't look at myself because I was petrified on that journey. I was really scared. I escaped in the nighttime by looking at the stars, and which is not inwards, it's definitely outwards. Yeah, I think if we can really do it on our own terms, so choose to have some time in every part of your day, in every day, choose to have 10 minutes and look in. Then it's on your own terms. It's not scary. You're doing it for yourself at that time. You don't know what might come up. And that's half the challenge as well, just having the courage to just don't worry about what comes up. Just sit and be, and let whatever comes up come up. Even if you can't do 10 minutes a day, don't be scared of the quiet times. Like, really allow yourself alone time. Be properly alone and not be scared of that, and really embrace it, because that's when stuff comes up for yourself.
That's great advice. That's really, really, I mean, there's always 20 minutes in a day.
But we might not choose to take it, definitely.
Yes.
I think we always find an excuse. I mean, even when I'm trying to do my 20-minute yoga, like 5 minutes in, the kettle will boil, or there'll be a phone call, or I'll suddenly remember something on my shopping list, and I may not actually do my 20 minutes. So it requires a commitment to ourselves on our own part to say, let me just stop my work, let me go outside and sit in the garden, or sit outside somewhere quietly, or even just go to the toilet and shut the door if you're in an office or something, and just have 5 minutes, close your eyes and just breathe. Listen to the sounds, listen to how you feel, listen to what comes up, don't judge it. It's proper meditation techniques that they talk about. Buddha helped us understand these techniques. It really does help. It's that place where we can connect with ourselves without being distracted, and that's when you get to know who you are, and then you can be the best and biggest version of yourself that you can be. That's where I feel that you can own your life, and there's so much pleasure in that. I never did it before, And now I do it more and more. And there's so much pleasure and peace that comes with knowing who you are and enjoying your life and not needing verification from other people for your decisions. Just having a very quiet day and not having to say anything or prove anything to anybody, just being quiet. There's a lot of peace that I never had before that is coming with me just doing that.
Speaking of peace, looking from outside, looking inwards, you've accomplished a lot of things. What's the next thing you're looking to accomplish? Are you still fighting to get your pictures into New York Times and fighting men with pictures which are not very, very brightly red colored, let's say?
That's a really wonderful thing you just said, because one of my biggest achievements is letting go of that and just moving into more of a place of being not totally, I don't know if I'll ever be totally, that's some enlightened person. There's always something to work on that's not quite in balance with ourselves. Yeah, just being at peace with that. Who am I? I've got 14,000 followers on Instagram. I don't have 243,000 like Yagazie.
Why do you need 200,000 followers?
One of my arguments when I had an issue with not having as many as I wanted is because the more people follow you, the more voice you have with things you want to say. And therefore, if you have something to say, like talking about fistula, like talking about women's rights, like environmental issues and, things like that I really want people to listen to and do something about and give them the chance, rather, to do something about if they want to. That's why I want to have a big following. Then people can hear if they want to. You can't force something that's not naturally there.
For me, social media is a different animal. But it's only one animal in the pack, right?
Yeah.
So my question would be, how can I get the same effect using what I know, the networks I know? We're having a conversation. I'm discovering this stuff as we go, as you discover and the audiences discover. So it's a journey.
Yeah.
As opposed to I have 250,000, and not to pander too much, but I don't know if you've ever hired somebody from social media who had a great account in social media, but then it's really difficult to convert that into like normal work, let's say.
This is actually one of my big points that I want to make. That I have a lot of some photographers or people that I take on for GG Images. It's all very well having a great portfolio for their personal work, but it's a whole nother ball game when they come and work for GG Images and their captions aren't right, or they have an issue dealing with the client, or, it's a very specific way of being a photographer that can work with a client. Working photographer is a skill, is very hard to come by when photographers who are able to shoot lots of different genres, work with people, be amenable, do video clips as well, but also be able to do all the stuff that a client needs. And that's why I think I have been successful, because I am able to really talk and listen to the client, give them what they need and give them more than what they need, and be articulate about it as well, if you like. So being able to do the captions, one of the reasons why my business and my agency is successful, because I manage all the photographers, they hand me in things, and there's always things that I need to do, like, for example, the captions, to give it then to the client in the standards that it's needed for the industry.
In which case, anybody who has a phone is a photographer. For people who wants to do this as a career, not the ones who are starting, but the ones who are halfway there.
Yeah.
And they feel like, I'm not getting anywhere. What advice would you give? What kind of advice do you have?
Well, unfortunately, one of my pieces of advice is that they need to get out there on social media. They need to get out there on the internet, is possibly more accurate. They need to have a very, very comprehensive, good website which showcases their work, which shows that they're professional, which shows that they are passionate and dedicated to their work, that they've got that body of work behind them. So there's lots of reasons why to have a website. And then, unfortunately, to be active on social media, because that increases their viewings, gets them noticed on the internet. And that's where, unfortunately, the arena where people discover what's out there. These days, there's not really any other areas. You find you can get published in magazines, but, it's a vicious circle. You've got to kind of be known or to have an amazing story that's unique and publishable in order to even get there. So much easier to make sure you have your portfolio and your work online where people can review it, and also get yourself on every platform you can find. So just to see which one is going to pick you up, if you like. So TikTok, and yes, the usual ones, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, but there's also lots of photographer forums, lots of places like Lens Culture, Burn Magazine. Like, make sure you have a portfolio in as many different places that celebrate photography as possible. And not only just celebrate photography. If you're a women photographer, then also get yourself and your work into some women artists places, women art, all the sort of hashtags, if you like, all the sort of places which would be able to showcase your work. Have yourself a profile in those places, that as many different people in those areas of interest can find you, and you could have a place where your work is shown. And that will be a cumulative effect. Get yourself visible. That's the key thing, just trying to get yourself visible. But you've got to have consistency and professionalism that go with your visibility, because it's all very well having a whole bunch of pictures out there, but if they're not professionally looking, and if you're not showing consistently good work, then no one's going to take that seriously as well. So you've got to have lots of other things that go with your visibility that help keep you there.
In fact, the baby has just left. Given that your Swahili is better than mine, what are some of your favorite Swahili phrases?
Do you know what? No, I don't even have any of those. I don't even know if I have that. But I love listening to how different tribes say Swahili things. So, for example, if we ask so Kikuyu guys, mixing the L's and the R's, if you want to, my favorite word for them to ask a Kikuyu to say is miterorojiko. And when I tell people my phone number, I say 50 and then 80. I love how Kikuyus talk. This is one of the things I love about being Kenyan, and really being able to hear the tongue, the sound, Limi accent, and I was born in Nairobi Hospital. So I don't have a favorite Swahili saying, but I love the way that different tribes and different people are from different areas in Kenya actually are, that all of us, in Kenya live our life. And I think that's one of the things I'd like to share.
In closing, do you think we left anything out that you want to put out in the world?
We covered lots of important, interesting things. I would hope that people are interested in this conversation, just sharing from a person who has gone through, yes, privileged, yes, seemingly successful, but has gone through, difficult times, and hopefully people can connect to what it's like to being lost and trying to find their way forward. I think that's something that has not been touched on in the past in conversations that I've had with people. So ultimately, at the end of the day, this is a conversation from one human to another human. And that is what is the most authentic thing about what I think we can highlight here. And that, I think, is what people can connect to, the humanness of, yes, Daniel's a podcaster talking to Georgina, who's a photographer. Those are the labels, but underneath all of that is what it's really about, is about two humans having a conversation. And when people listen to this, they can find aspects of this that they can connect to. So have we left anything out? Oh, there's so many things. I mean, I'd love to talk a lot more about being a mother and what that means and how to juggle and balance that in life. But I think ultimately we have hit the nail on the head about discussing life's difficulties and identity and belonging and moving that forward, and how to have some direction and peace in life.
Lastly, perhaps Gigi Images. If you were to make an ad for it right now, what would you say?
Yes. So one of the things I love about Gigi Images is connecting to talent, media talent all across Africa. Just a bit of background to Gigi Images. I know you wanted a quick, succinct advert for Gigi Images, but the background to Gigi Images, and one of the wonderful things is we're just closing an assignment now for the Royal Academy of Engineering, and we had 15 assignments. So I had 10 photographers doing more than one assignment, but we had in Uganda, Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, Nigeria, Togo, and Congo, Brazzaville. And it gives me goosebumps just thinking how exciting it is. For example, the photographer from Brazzaville, there's a young Congolese woman photographer, Victoire, And for me, it's extraordinarily exciting finding her and putting her on our books and working with her and giving her a bit of training as we work, and then seeing her final pictures and being able to hand that into the Royal Academy of Engineering in London, and being the vehicle that GG Images is, being the opportunity to work with people from all across Africa and making sure that their standard is of a standard that can work with a big society like Royal Academy of Engineering. Yes, so your tagline is, send your portfolio in to GG Images and be part of a network of talent across Africa, working with international organizations. The opportunity to connect Africa-based photographers and media with the global industry looking for content.
Good stuff. Finally. Now you threw me off. I will forget.
Sorry, my husband's asking me, am I all right still holding the baby?
Oh, yes. So good stuff. I mean, I'm really happy to have this conversation. I feel like we've covered a bunch.
Yeah, I think one of your skills as an interviewer is really picking up on the depth of finding the things that maybe I missed out, I didn't initially want to talk about or offer to talk about, and then you bring that up and you invite that. But also just seeing the character, my character, and being able to embrace that and bring that forward as human, as a person, and really celebrating that in your conversation. So thank you very much for that, Daniel.
Thank you. I want to thank you for inviting me into your family. I met your family and it's been awesome conversation. And let's keep having this conversation. Apart from Gigi, is there anything else you want to plug? If there's anything you want to plug.
I think we covered most of the things that I wanted to talk about, which would be GG Images, being a Canon Ambassador, the online trainings, really celebrating young photographers and media across Africa. That's a very important part of what I want to really do going forward in my life, is to do a lot more of GG Images, working to bring forward opportunities for African-based media. I think that's really the main thing that I wanted to highlight.
We spoke a lot about Canon. One thing I want to know is, during your period as a Canon ambassador, what's the major thing that you really learned and stayed with you?
Good question. I feel that I wasn't more about the technology. As a Canon ambassador, I was more about inviting people to connect to me as a human, as somebody who was being a personality, how to interact, how to be a photographer, not just pressing the button, but behind the scenes, how to be with people instead of being about the equipment. So what did I learn? Gosh, it's a very good question. I learned that I need to know more about the equipment. Difficult to say. What did I learn? I loved being a Canon ambassador because of the trust I feel it allowed people to feel towards me, or it helped people feel towards me. Having that label, I really felt helped people connect to me and want them to ask me to be their mentor, or want me to be part of their lives as a photographer or media person. I feel that when that was taken away, I would miss that. But still, people think of me as a Canon ambassador. They still write in my bio, Canon ambassador, even though I'm not technically one. I think it doesn't seem to matter as much as I thought it would. So I'm quite relieved about that. So what did I learn? It's more, I think, about suddenly not being a Canon ambassador that I learned the most about myself and my capabilities and what I stand for. It really, suddenly not being one, I've learned more. Okay. Sorry, Canon.
Okay. And another one is, as a professional photographer, are we less of a photographer if we shoot not in manual?
No, not at all. I think it's not about pressing the button, and it's not really about having the camera, actually, being a photographer. Again, we keep coming back to this. Being a photographer is about access, about being able to be with the people, how to get the story. And even if you capture it on your smartphone, you're still a photographer. What I usually say to people with this question is, your camera is your tool, and you have absolutely no excuse for not understanding how your tool works and all the equipment that you can have access to. That is a learned thing, and we should, as artists, really understand the tools that we work with. So there's no excuse not to know how to work with the manual. with manual on your camera. You should know how to do that. And then you have the choice whether you work in manual or not. For me, I choose not to because I shoot so quickly from one angle, one left to right to up and down. If I was to shoot manual, I would not have time quickly to change my dials, to adjust for the light, turning from left to right. I shoot in aperture priority mode so that I can just create for me the depth of field and the design of the frame that I want. I think a lot of men choose shutter priority and a lot of women generally shoot aperture priority. And maybe it's just because you need to be good at maths really to think about shutter speed. I feel I'm not very good at maths, so I think more in terms of the design of the frame as opposed to the numbers, which you would need to think in if you're doing shutter speed. But no, you're not any less of a photographer if you don't shoot in manual, because pressing the button really is the last thing, and getting that frame right. You've got to have done everything else before that to even get to that moment where you've got your camera in the right place and you've got the permission to press that button. That's a huge part of being a photographer, is creating the moment for yourself where you can do the button pressing.
And finally, I know
yeah,
too much of your time.
No, it's okay.
Outside of this conversation, where would you send people to find about you?
Well, I've put a lot of time and effort into my website, so georginagoodwin.com. And my brother-in-law is a website designer, so I have access to continuous free tweaks on my website. So I've taken advantage of that, and I've got an absolutely beautiful website which showcases my work. I've got the 15-year archive portfolio. A lot of that website is for GG Images. I've got my network. Their work is being showcased on my website. So yes, georginagoodwin.com is definitely a lot of where you can find out about who I am and what I do and about GG Images. My Instagram is GG Kenya, is possibly a really good place these days if you wanted to look at my Instagram.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you inviting me to your family and to take a weekend off and have this great conversation. And more importantly, I appreciate you for being open.
On my way out, I'd like again to thank Georgina for being so gracious, for being so open, for being so kind to share her story so far. Please go support her work, follow her endeavors on social media. The link is in the description. She's easy to find. Her name is Georgina Goodwin. Her work is all over social media, and our initiatives are ongoing. I hope you have been inspired. Until the next one, my name is Daniel Duwa. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to Kenyan Stories. Remember, Kenyan Stories is a long-form podcast. We sit with some of your favorite artists, some of your favorite business people, personality, people from all over the place who are doing amazing stuff. My name is Daniel Duwa. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe, join, share, like all that good stuff. Join me in the next Kenyan Stories. Until next time, goodbye.